All right, we are practicing for our quiz tomorrow. We have a quadratic in vertex form. Before we go ahead and graph it, I'm going to ask you to find the following things. Yeah. Make sure that I get it back because I have like almost none left. All right, guys. So the first thing I'm going to ask you to find is the vertex. Guys, please. This is in vertex form, so you should be able to get the vertex kind of easily. Does anybody remember what it's going to be?
1, -.
Yes. So to find the vertex in vertex form, it's always the opposite of the number that's in there with the x, comma, whatever the number is over here. Okay? So the vertex here is +1, -3. So you don't have to do any work to get that. So that's a freebie. Then B, what?
I took mine. Can I use a pencil?
Oh my God. I don't even know if I have any left. Here.
Asking me. I literally
Oh my goodness. YouTube, save me. These kids are wild.
Oh, hey, YouTube.
I'm just... Some billionaire's got to watch this and say, this teacher needs a vacation.
What if like one of them goes like viral out of all of them? Like everyone has like 2 views, and so this one just goes.
Hey, I have one that has like 1,500 views already.
Really?
Yeah, it's only taken like 6 years to get there.
6 years?
Mm-hmm.
What is it?
So if I watch it, every
It's
day-
graphing how to write the equation of a quadratic given the x-intercepts. So it's an algebra 2 video, but eventually I'll give you the x-intercepts and I'll say, okay, what parabola, what quadratic has the equation that hits in these 2 places? It's actually kind of fun. But anyway,
So
yes. So if I have my vertex, the next thing I'm going to ask you for is the axis of symmetry. So you know this one, it's just, if you have this with x equals, yes, whatever that number is, make sure you write x equals. The next thing I'm going to ask you for is if the parabola opens up or down. Down in this case. I'm going to ask you if the vertex is a max or a min. A max in this case, because if my parabola is down, the vertex is the highest point I have, so it's a max. The domain, you know that? X equals all reals, it's always that, so that's an easy one. The range. Remember what your parabola looks like. Yes. So, because this is my highest point, all my other y values will be less than that value. And I just look at my vertex, whatever the y coordinate is, there, I'll just pop that in right there. G is the y-intercept. This one I do have to do a little bit of work on, but it's not so bad. How do you find the y-intercept? Jordan?
Don't you plug in the x, so you plug in b, well, you plug in like x equals 1, so...
You already know what, when x equals 1, the answer is -3. You already got that.
I don't know.
For the y-intercept, girls, for the y-intercept you plug in, yes, 0 for x. So I just pop in a 0 for x. 0 minus 1 is -1. -1 squared is now +1, times -2 is -2. -2 minus 3 is?
That's -5.
-5. So yes, feel free to do it out if you need to, but that's the idea. You just got to plug in a 0 for x and see what comes out. And then h is the x-intercept, so I'll actually do that over here. There is some work involved there. If I want to find the x-intercepts, I'm replacing y with a 0. Okay, so I replace y with 0, and now I just want to solve for x. So in this case, I can add the 3 over. Anytime you have it in vertex form, you can solve by square rooting.
Wait, why does G say 0, -5?
Because that's what you get for the y-intercept, isn't it? Did you plug in 0 for x? So 0 minus 1 is negative 1. Square, you get positive 1. Times negative 2 is negative 2, right? What's negative 2 minus 3?
Yep.
So let's see. I'm at 3, negative 2. X minus 1 squared. What do I do with this step?
Would you
Square root both sides. And what happens right here?
So, square is what?
I can't take the square root of a negative. So what does that mean?
Nothing.
There are no x-intercepts. All right. So now I have tons of information, and I'm definitely ready to graph this. So I can just take everything that I found and start plotting these things. I know the vertex is at 1, negative 3. I know the y-intercept is at 0, negative 5. So I can just mirror that over. I don't have any x-intercepts. So I do want one more point. I could either plug in 3 or negative 1, or if you know the pattern, from the second dot I can go down 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over 1.
So
1, 2.
I was gonna ask you before this. You move it from the point, so like you wouldn't move it from the beginning point.
Right. You go, well, so remember, when A is 1, you would go 1, then 3, then 5, from one point to the next. So now, since A is negative 2, I'm going down 2, down 6, down 10. I mean,
From the first point. I mean
from the next point, right. From the point that you just did, you go another one. So then I connect everything with a nice smooth curve. Is it everything I thought it would be? It's down. Oh, I didn't ask you wide and arrow on this? Well, that's weird. I may ask you that tomorrow. Would you know if this, without graphing it, would this have been wide or narrow? Narrow. If A is any number bigger than 1, remember the sign doesn't matter for that. That just tells you up or down. So really you're looking at the absolute value of A. If it's bigger than 1, it's narrow. And the bigger it is, the more narrow it is. So to get wide ones, we have to have fractions. Okay, so there's a little recap of intercept form. Now, let's try, I'm sorry, that was vertex form. Let's try intercept form. So let's rewind back up to number 2. And let's assume that I wanted to answer all the same questions, A through H, on number 2 now. I don't know the vertex right off the bat. What do I know right away? What do I kind of get for free? Right, the x-intercepts. So if you remember these two values, I want to take the opposite of each one because it's as if I'm solving this quadratic, right? So my two solutions, wouldn't they have been negative 3 and positive 1? That's where this thing is crossing the x-axis. So I actually get H. I already have the answer for H without doing too much math. So how would I write that? I'd write x equals with the funny brackets. Negative 3, positive 1. Don't you dare put smooth parentheses around that, because that is an ordered pair and you don't mean that at all. Now, I do need to find my vertex, but I know something. It might be helpful actually to at least plot those two. Negative 3 and 1. Negative 3, positive 1. Where must my vertex be? Yeah, exactly. The vertex has to be halfway in between those two x-intercepts. So, negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2. Divided by 2 is?
0.
Negative 1. So I know my vertex is somewhere on that axis of symmetry. So now I have that part. Is everybody okay where I got the negative 1 from?
Yeah.
Okay, so now if I'm going to answer all these things, I know the vertex is at -1 comma something, I just don't know the something part, but I do know the axis of symmetry would be at x equals -1. All right, how do I find the something part? It's at -1 comma what? How do I do that?
You plug in negative one.
Yes, I want to know what's the value of this when x is -1. So there are two x's, that's okay, you're just going to replace both of them. So -1 plus 3 is 2. -1 minus 1 is -2. I'm multiplying those together, so that gets me -4, but don't forget about this negative out in front here. So that gets me +4 in the end. So -1, +4. And, oops, why did I write negative? I don't know. +4. So there's my vertex. And before I even continue, is it starting to look like what I expect it should look like? Because is this going to be up or down? Down. So let's answer letter C, down. So if you had messed that up and you got -1, -4 as the vertex, hopefully you'd say, well, that's an up like a cup parabola, and that's not what it's supposed to be. So something's wrong, right? But we got one up here, which puts my parabola upside down like it's supposed to be. So I'm like, all right, that looks okay. Is my parabola going to be a max or a min?
Max.
Max. So D is max. E was the domain. X is all reals. That's always what it is.
Wait, what is A?
The vertex. In our case, it's -1, 4.
What?
F, the range in this case. If my parabola is down, the range would be y is less than or equal to 4. Remember, it's always the same as the y coordinate of the vertex. And then what's G? The y-intercept. Okay. I actually think I'll be able to get that if I do the graph. I think it's going to come out nice. Because can't I just use the pattern? Isn't A equal to 1? I know it's -1, but can't I just do the 1, 3, 5? Yeah, so from my vertex, go down 1 over 1. Go down 3 over 1, it's already there. Then if you want to do another one, you can go down 5. So I can tell on my graph where my y-intercept is. Where is it? Where's the...
0, 3.
Yes. So you could do the math, but... And you would have to if your y-intercept wasn't nice. Like if it didn't cross exactly at a point, I'd have to plug it in and see exactly where it is. But mine did cross nicely, so I can just pop that in. And that's pretty much it. So, any questions on how to do this? Everybody's okay?
One, just so that I get a refresher.
Oh, number 1. Can I, yes, we're going to do those with inequalities. So could we actually do 9?
Oh, yeah.
So I actually think I'll stop this video and then we'll start a new one for inequalities.
I do.